London is one of the most famous and significant cities in the world. Tourists come here for the attraction and landmarks and migrants for higher earnings, but the British capital is not just Big Ben and fish and chips. In this video, I'll show you a different London. For example, I'll take you to a stunning garden built on the site of old docks.
It looks like a huge greenhouse in a botanic garden. In fact, it's the roof of the tube station.
I'll talk about the problem of homelessness in London.
Here's a Marks & Spencer store, and there are around 5 people sleeping at the entrance with blankets and mattresses.
I'll show you the Olympic legacy of the 2012 Summer Olympics.
It looks tidy and clean. It's even open to visitors. How come it does not fall apart?
And I'll explain which other megacities London is similar to.
It reminds me of those city ferries in New York.
But before we begin, don't forget to like this video and check that you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss new uploads.
In 2012, London hosted the Olympic Games. Let's see what happened to its Olympic heritage. Usually, it turns into the biggest problem, and the infrastructure quickly gets out of order after the end of the Olympics. It's supposed to receive more than 1 million tourists at once. They construct huge parking lots, tons of residential quarters, and transport networks. When the Olympics is over, no one needs it anymore, because there are not enough tourists for that. London hosted the Summer Olympics 3 times. By 2012, they put up sports facilities, a railway station, and the Olympic Village for athletes in Stratford. Back then, Londoners grumbled at plenty of money spent on the dubious buildings. Say, the Orbit Observation Tower was called the ugliest building in the UK. It's still there, turned into an amusement object. The basketball field was torn down, but the plain houses of the Olympic Village were turned into a nice new residential area. Before the Olympics, you couldn't call Stratford the most pleasant London neighborhood. It had been taken by manufacturing plants for ages, including chemical factories. It was one of the filthiest city areas. Then they cleaned up the river, arranged a giant park, constructed houses and offices. We're walking along the new buildings. Some time ago, it was a wasteland. Everything you see here was constructed after the Olympics. First floors, lively restaurants, lots of people, hurrying somewhere. After the Olympics was over, they closed the area, and it's still under reconstruction. It became real residential quarters, carefully embedded into London's urban structure. Just like the rest of London's districts, it's well known and popular, not unkempt or anything. That's the Aquatic Center, designed by architect Zaha Hadid. Here are the last pieces left from the Olympics. I guess it was a kind of slope, currently out of service and surrounded with concrete blocks. But it's a unique spot to see. They keep packing it up. Here are the remains of a bridge. That's how fans approached the stadium. It's currently being rebuilt too. These buildings were put up some couple of years ago. I haven't seen them on my previous visit. Here's a cafe. You see they're developing the area. Here are several high-rises you see. There are lots of high-rises next to the tube, mostly office buildings. They constructed a pretty good park, even though there's not enough space for a playground. They still arranged a nice, pleasant area. Here's a bench, and here's a slide. Those are our darling Russian birch trees, with a seesaw in the middle. You see, everything looks safe, nice and clean. A feast for the eyes. I often call the houses an example of good high-rises, worth standing in the city. It's not about building a 25-story house. It's about covering the whole area with them, not caring of infrastructure. Here's how caring of details and development looks like. They planted trees, adult trees. Just look at the stunning cherry trees. They can shield you from London's sun. Check out the playgrounds, fences, bushes. Everything looks tidy and delicate. There's nothing wrong about a high-rise. It's wrong to put up a whole bunch of them. It's wrong to cover the suburbs with residential buildings, not caring of everyday life in the future, of transport or the overloaded infrastructure. No one cares of infrastructure. People will need services and workplaces, schools and daycare, playgrounds and everything. On top of that, they pay great attention to quality and details. Each square meter shows you the love and care the British pay to the city. Here are pots with birch trees in. The pots are equipped with automatic watering system and nicely decorated. The floor is perfectly paved, with not a single loose tile. As for the trees, they're adult ones, with fancy tree grates. Each single pot is amazing in its quality and loveliness. Here's a tree flashlight. Check out the insightful fence. They went so far as to employ someone to design their fence. Now it contains various information. The Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park. Now check out the development. Everything's so fancy and lovely, isn't it? Check out the trees. They planted adult trees in here. I'd say they're like 10 meters high or even more. These ones are shorter, but still brand new. Check out the scene. They totally renovated it. Considering that a million or hundreds of thousands of fans are not here anymore. Let's have a look at Sochi. When you come there, all you see is a vast paved wasteland. But here it looks much more cozy and snuggly. I would never guess it had once been taken by thousands of fans. Here you see, that's a mirror bridge. And here's a kind of historical bridge. That's the Olympic Velo Park. It had not fallen apart after 10 years either. Amazing. It looks tidy and clean. It's even open to visitors. How come it does not fall apart? I guess the thing is, there are no gannets. If there were any, they'd peck it through. Not a single board has fallen off. I just can't believe my eyes. Something must have gone wrong. They could have shattered the window at least. Back then, the Velo Park used to be surrounded with parking lots and wastelands. But now, they put up buildings out there. And you see the buildings are of various types. There are some pretty expensive ones, overlooking the park on the one side, and the amazing Velo Park on the other side. But there's also regular classical townhouses of London. You see, that's what I call a barrier-free environment. He's riding an electric wheelchair, and he doesn't need help to ride along and enjoy the area. He feels absolutely comfortable. We're in Queen Elizabeth Park, or the Royal Park, whatever you call it. What's interesting about it? It has rather peculiar landscape. The main idea was to make you feel in the open. Everything is perfectly well planned. Even the narcissus flowers were obviously planted on the slope. The lawn is mowed, the trees are cared for. Everything is well organized and perfectly arranged for embodying wildlife within the city. Here's a water games area. There are no kids, and I can film it. There's no water yet, as it's still winter, or rather spring. But soon they'll... You see, the nozzles are covered with lids. Then they'll open them up and let people enjoy water treats.
Ha! 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 Hoppa!
Here are the famous townhouses of London. Each has a separate entrance and a small patch of land, with a bigger one in the backyard. Here are parking lots. Check this out. The houses are of various style. It says if you break the rules, you'll be fined. You see, some places are marked with numbers and warning signs, restricting parking. Those are the backyards of the townhouse block, with a garage down there and a kind of facilities up there. Here's an interesting point about the residential area behind my back. It used to be an Olympic village, for athletes I mean. After the athletes left in the end of the Olympics, the area was rebuilt, renovated, and turned into regular quarters with regular apartments. On top of that, they filled up the area with plenty of various buildings of different types. There are both expensive and cheap houses, townhouses, and a couple of skyscraper-like buildings. On top of that, there are also mixed-type houses with various functions. The mixed neighborhood gives you the urban feeling. In Russia, when they develop suburbs, they put up residential buildings and that's it. And then they act all surprised, realizing there's nothing except for parking lots and high-rises, and the only infrastructure they have is liquor stores and plain small shops. No business can develop in such suburbs. The problem of traffic and transport is rather tough. Because of the crowd commuting twice a day, the areas are typically unsafe, and so on and so forth. The main point about this neighborhood is the perfect urban planning, the perfect mixed development. That's how various building types and functions should be mixed together. In the end, we get a lively city in a former industrial area. In 2011, St. Martin's University moved into the former grain storage. Offices of The Guardian, YouTube, and Facebook opened here. A new Google office is expected to open soon. My friends, miracles are just around the corner. Some guys came up to me and said that this was the new Facebook office. And I was like, is it really? There are no signs or anything. But it really is, and they deliberately don't put up any signs. Maybe they don't want upset users to knock at the door and ask why they were blocked. Here's a small, colorful square with huge flower pots and birch trees growing in there, with bright benches and a painted patch on the floor. It looks great, bright and unusual. It's rather vital in the grey industrial area of London. The office of Google was originally constructed in a deprived area. What do people think about the bright, colorful building standing right in the middle of a historical area? The building is not new, you know. It was built by Renzo Piano, a comparatively popular architect. I believe the residents of the area don't mind it. St. Giles was initially one of the poorest and most deprived areas with the biggest slums. It's pretty fancy now. You see, there are still some weird areas out there. The street is called Shaftesbury Avenue, and it's still pretty deprived. It's been fine for the last 2 or 3 years, but 3 or 4 years back it was taken by drug addicts. The area is pretty deprived, and I believe the residents are pleased with the new and shiny building. The back street is also clean and tidy with tons of restaurants. But if you turn around the corner, you'll still feel the spirit of the slums that had been here some 50 years ago. Poor people do not always live in the slums and ghettos of London. The homeless feel at ease on the central and main streets of the city. I'm on the Oxford Street, the main shopping street in London, I'd say. I can compare it, say, to Fifth Avenue in New York, or to Verskaya Street in Moscow. I was gonna mention the Avenue des Champs-Élysées in Paris, but it's not that wide. The traffic is rather low. But as for the trade and the malls full of famous brands, they're pretty similar. It's almost nighttime, the stores are closed, and lots of homeless people came out to the streets. Let's have a look at them, and I'll tell you the reason for that. Here's a Marks & Spencer store, and there are around 5 people sleeping at the entrance, with blankets and mattresses. Here are people sleeping right at the entrance. Here's a canopied store, and you see, people put mattresses right here, and sleep together, hugging each other. You see, there are lots of people. Lots of different people. That's a usual scene in London. Stores close for the night, and people bring their mattresses and blankets under the canopies and fall asleep, just like you do in your bed. No one is ashamed of their social problems. No one shoos away homeless people, even if they're sleeping on the main street. So they're sleeping there like a living reminder of the problems in the society. It can be pandemic consequences, it can be the issues of the conservative government that curtailed police power, social services, medicine, and whatnot. Some were not able to reach a psychiatrist. Some were not accepted to sobering centers. For some, that was a trick of fate. Life in London is expensive, you know. Here, the working class are used to renting a dwelling. The rent also keeps getting higher. In the last 10 or 15 years, the real estate prices have gone mad. That's the reason for people ending up on the streets. You know, there's a good saying, only one trauma is what stands between you and the street. If you don't have those who are ready to help you or give you a place to live, you can find yourself on the streets. The homeless need a particular environment. I mean, a huge, mad crowd of people. You can barely find a crowd madder than that on Oxford Street. Lots of people roam out there, ready to donate money. That's why they dwell out there. Let's see how the British keep their historical heritage. If you can't renovate an old building, you can embed it into the area. My friends, here's a solution to dealing with somehow ruined buildings. Renovation is not always necessary. The same with restoration and demolition of the remnants. A good way is to preserve the ruins and turn it into a landmark, into a kind of monument or something. Just like that. I don't know what it used to be. A church, maybe. Anyway, it's not that anymore. It's just ruins now. I'm walking along a bridge passage, and here are some remnants down there. It used to be either a kind of house or a temple, whatever. You know, we're in a modern area. That's the city over there. In a modern area with skyscrapers and office buildings, they somehow preserved their history and turned it into a basis for a small landscape park. They even constructed passages between the buildings and decorated them with curved benches. Leinster Gardens Street shows vividly the respect they pay to their city and its environment. You can look close at the houses 23 and 24. You'll notice their fronts are fake. The thing is, in the 1860s, a tube line was launched here. Back then, steam trains went not so deep and let out steam in the open. Houses on their way were generally demolished, but it was decided to leave the fronts in the fancy area. You see, it's visible. The windows are made of glass here, but over there, the windows are clearly fake. Those are false windows. They didn't want to demolish the fancy houses and decided to leave the fronts. From here, it's clear the windows are totally fake. So are the doors. If you spend a night in the hotel, you'll not hear any tube trains from 1 to 5 a.m. But for the rest of your stay, you'll hear the clatter. Have you watched the Sherlock TV series? There's an episode when Sherlock brings Watson's wife here and projects her portrait on the wall. Then he's like, "I got you. You're as empty as the wall." Yellow and green tube lines pass down there with their spacious trains. When you ride them, you see, unlike the red one that goes underground, it was built with modern technologies. The reason is the way of construction. The line was built for steam trains. Now we may hear the clatter of the trains, although it's not loud. Back in the 19th century, we'd see a plume of steam and hear much louder clatter. London Tube is the oldest in the world. It was launched in 1863. Excluding the new Elizabeth Speed Line, the London Tube contains 11 lines and 272 stations. The tube is constantly changing, and so is the city. The lines were formerly constructed by private companies without any plan. As a result, some areas had more stations than they needed, and still some lacked them. More than 50 stations in London were closed or rebuilt. Many of them are still there. Say, you may have seen Aldwych Station in movies. The Prodigy filmed a music video in there. There were big plans for the station, but the reality of the South Coast destroyed them. Firstly, the South Coast of Thames turned out very rocky. Secondly, it has lots of underground rivers. The South Coast was always poorer. When they reached the area, they realized their failure and agreed on the deal we have now. There's a line going from Holborn to Covent Garden. They purchased another one and worked with it, and turned the spot into a kind of appendage. Piccadilly line kept working. Its trains passed here every 15 minutes, stopped for like 15 or 20 minutes to collect passengers, and rode further to the north. Anything for your money in London. You can even throw a party in there. Just get ready for climbing down a long, steep stair. Special service brigades practice in there. I can't stop. No. Okay. Special service brigades practice in there. Say, it's the best place for firemen to practice tube evacuation. Let's have a look at the brand new Elizabeth Line stations. It's a speed line integrated into the tube system. It had been under construction for 13 years. The opening was postponed for a long time. The British started worrying about Queen Elizabeth not being able to see the line named after her. The launch was timed for the 70th anniversary of her reign. As a result, the budget was $4 billion higher, and the delay was 3.5 years. Here's the slanting elevator. If you need to go down with a wheelchair or a stroller, you can use the elevator that goes along with the escalator. That's the most modern station of the London Tube. Don't you like it? You know, it looks like a mental ward with its sort of soft wall panels. Check out its length. It's insane. They're extremely long, insanely long. All cars are open-ended. You can pass all the way through a train. Here is the station design. Almost all Elizabeth Line stations are designed similarly, with white, concrete wall panels and widely spread platforms. There's a tunnel going through the station with several exits to the platforms. The tracks are fenced off with a glass wall going up to the ceiling, and it's soundproof. Trains arrive almost soundlessly. The line is totally soundproof. You hear no sounds inside either. As for the platform, you see, here's the train arriving, and it's totally silent. I can keep on speaking, and it's absolutely fine. I don't even have to raise my voice. The car is wide and spacious, 2 seats on each side, like in a commuter train. It actually reminds me of a commuter train. You see, there are various cars. Some have 2 seats on each side. Some feature rows of seats that we are used to going along the car's sides. Here's another way of designing Elizabeth Line stations. The name of the station is encircled with the famous logo of London Tube. Here's the spacious platform with its usual glass wall and doors for the cars. It looks exactly like the previous station, with a giant lamp on the ceiling. Those are peculiar-looking escalators. They're painted in yellow. The train's coming, and it goes soundlessly. Amazing. That's how Paddington platform looks like. That's where the trains arrive at. The trains are incredibly long. I can't see the end of the platform. It goes all the way out there. Check this out. You can use both regular escalators and elevators. The station is minimalistic, made of concrete, metal, and glass. There are also brick framings. That's a huge station. Let's go farther up. You see, here's a skylight, a street view, and turnstiles.
If you're also impressed by the scale of the new underground line in London, give this video a like. But there's another type of public transport in the city that caught my interest.
In case you don't like underground transport, try a water one. Here are unlimited day passes. They're £18.90. Well, it depends on travel cards and stuff. In general, an adult unlimited day pass is around £20. A one-way ticket is £7.70. It's rather expensive. Here you can estimate the speed of the boat. It's going upstream, and the Thames stream is pretty fast. The superboat is arriving at Westminster. Inside, it looks like a ferry. It reminds me of those city ferries in New York. Here are the seats. Here's a cafe for you to grab a coffee on your way to work. The last passengers have just boarded. And it's instantly gaining speed. I don't know its engine power, but it feels like, well, a speedy thing. But I still like two-wheelers more, and I couldn't do without reviewing London cycle lanes. You see, it's CS8. That's how they mark routes, cycle routes. Plenty of people ride their bicycles at the end of the day. Cycle routes are painted blue. In Amsterdam, they're red, but here they're blue, like in Copenhagen. You see, they're fenced off on bridges to prevent cars from using them. Cycle routes are fenced off with a heavy guardrail. The downtown is equipped with bicycle signals. They've even turned some car tunnels into bicycle ones. We're now in the area with barely any cycle lanes. The thing is, projects like cycle lanes are hard to deal with. They're supposed to pass all the way through the city, but in fact, you should arrange it in each district separately. On the one hand, it's London's advantage. On the other hand, you should decide everything on the local level, including cycle lanes. Some don't, so you can lose it at any moment. A good example is Kensington. They used to have cycle lanes there, but then they got rid of them. The fault is on those who prefer driving cars to riding bicycles. Well, not everyone welcomes bicycle lovers, but those who drive electric cars must feel perfectly at ease in London. My friends, as you may know, there are more and more e-cars, and we should have separate infrastructure for them. I mean charging stations. The stations usually look like huge, bulky, and complicated boxes. But I met an interesting and elegant option here in London. Take a look at the street. It's an ordinary street in the downtown of London. Now, try to find charging stations here. They're nowhere to be seen. But here's a sign, you see? Here's a parking place for e-cars, but there's no charging station. The reason is the chargers are installed into the lampposts. That's a regular lamppost with no special devices or anything, except for the charger. That's how it looks like. The access is via the app. Here's a manual. You download the app and charge your car. That's how the charging via lampposts works. Here's a Tesla connected to the socket. As simple as that. That is one awesome charger. There are more and more e-cars each day. Check this out. They have special plates with a green stripe to point out it's an e-car. Here's another Tesla with a green striped plate. The government is trying to decrease the traffic level, at least in the center where the problem is tough. They develop public transport system, arrange cycle lanes and toll roads, and narrow up the highways. In the early 20th century, they thought it right to make streets as wide as possible, as the only way to avoid traffic jams. So they built a 5-lane road in here, encircling the temples, you see? And another 5-lane road in there. It was a one-way road, and everyone drove like crazy, taking advantage of it. Now, as you can see, they're trying to make it pedestrian-friendly. They've tried for a whole year. I believe it'll take them another 6 months. Tons of pipelines pass below. You know, all that stuff. Gas and water pipes, cables, communication lines, and so on and so forth. It also needs to be changed. The construction has gone on for ages. I guess it will last forever. They stacked up the tiles nicely. When it finally comes to an end, I hope it looks good. They'll move traffic to the upper side and make the place look better. My friends, as you may know, some drivers neglect traffic rules and cause terrible accidents. It gets especially dangerous in residential quarters, where kids keep running across the streets. That's why there should be speed limits. But how do they work? You can put cameras all over the place. But as you know, cameras turn out useless because some speeders don't give a damn. That's why you can't be too careful with tangible ways of controlling traffic. Let's see how Londoners deal with it. That's what they do. Firstly, the road marking gets kind of crooked in front of the uncontrolled crosswalk. It's supposed to attract drivers' attention. Here's another interesting point. You see, here's a crosswalk equipped with flickering yellow lamps. Drivers are supposed to give way to pedestrians here. There are two types of crosswalks in England. If there's a crosswalk with flickering yellow lights, it means drivers must give you way. As for the rest of them, if there's no traffic light, cars have priority. You'd better check the road before crossing it. As a way to make drivers slow down in front of crosswalks, they make the road deliberately narrower. The road gets significantly narrower. You see, it gets so narrow, they have to stop and drive very carefully. You may ask me, Ilya, what about buses, dump trucks, large cars? How do they pass it? There's a separate bypass for buses, dump trucks, and large cars. I'll use it now. You see, they have to make a kind of curve. It's wide enough for heavy vehicles, but you still have to slow down. We're moving on, and here's an artificial bump. That's how it's marked, and you have to slow down again. We're moving on, and here's a spot where people cross the road, and it gets narrow again. That's a set of measures keeping you from breaking the speed limit. That's the way of urban planning preventing you from breaking the rules, even if you want to. I've said it lots of times. That's the way to design the streets. Even if there's a speeder who doesn't give a damn about being fined, who is tipsy or even mad, there's no way for them to speed up. If you are sure London is just a set of nice, fancy houses, you were wrong. London also consists of ugly high-rises. There used to be a road, a 4-lane road, with 2 lanes in this direction and 2 opposite ones. Then they made it narrower. It got narrower. And here's a sign warning you about the narrow road and giving priority to cars driving that way. What are the tools? Poles, benches, and a kind of flower pots with trees in them. That's one of the ways to control traffic in downtown. Here's an interesting plate. That's a new public space for you to enjoy. They started constructing it during the pandemic. The pandemic's over, and now they have a nice spot. That's a pretty simple way to control the traffic in downtown and make the streets more attractive and secure. I love what they did. There are lots of such benches in the city. Then I decided to visit the Canaries, not the Spanish islands, but the local business area. My friends, where am I? I'm in Canary Wharf. It's the second business area after the city. Canary Wharf is a kind of alternative to it. It's a new business area with skyscrapers and plenty of various high-rises. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here to see an amazing indoor garden. They built it above the canal. On my way, I'll tell you a bit about the area. It's located on the Isle of Dogs. How did Canary Wharf get its name? The docks of London and the queue were here once. They served for unloading fruit from the Canary Islands, and the wharf was named after them. Then the docks became useless, as the logistics of London and Britain were changed. For some time, the industrial area was abandoned, but in the 90s, they started developing it and turned it into a business area. Step by step, skyscrapers started opening here. One of them was ranked the highest in Britain for some time. Well, as a result, it was turned into a huge business hub. It's a typical business area with glass towers. Ugh, who would like that? And here's the tallest building. Well, it used to be. Now, the Shard is the tallest building in London. This one's not anymore. It's just a concrete box with a turret. Nothing interesting. Check this out. A wonderful nook. It's not a summer terrace in a fancy restaurant. It's just a small public space. It must be so pleasant to sit here, to come out of a conditioned concrete office and sit here in the shadow, under the foliage of the trees, bushes, or whatever they have here. Looks like nut trees. Nut trees, yeah. That's the cutest urban planning. That's how they make the area green. Check out the greenery creeping up the street lamp. It's just amazing. No matter how many trees you plant here, it's never enough. It's not about greenery, it's about the lack of history. The thing about the new glass and concrete areas is that there's nothing genuine here, nothing heartening, you know? Not a single old stone to make you feel the long history of the place. That's one of a bizarre thing they built right on the water. Finally, here it is. Lots of trees and various plants. It looks like a huge greenhouse in a botanic garden. In fact, it's the roof of the tube station. Amazing. Check out the exotic plants. I have no idea what it is. Write your guess in the comments below. That's a garden on a roof. It's a unique place, I'd say. I believe it stays green all year long. You see, it's covered with a roof. I guess they arranged special microclimate, and you can visit it even when the rest of London trees sleep. As a result, they got a modern greenhouse on the roof. Do you remember? It was a tube station with several stores and stuff. They turned it into a green public space. It's weekend, but the place is full of people. I'd do my best not to film them, but you see, there are lots of kids celebrating something over there. Plenty of people are roaming around. Whoa, 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 what's that? It's a wonderful bridge with semi-transparent geometric patterns. The bridge connects the station to the street. In 2020, it hosted a street art festival. Various artists presented their art objects, some of which are still here. Visitors can download a special map showing the spots with art objects. If you're into art, you'll enjoy it. There are lots of various sculptures, along with street art objects. That's a way to liven up a plain office area. That's what remained of, not of former glory, but of harbor past. The British pay attention to every single detail. Let's have a look at another spot. This area, well, you see, the site is fenced off, as it's still under construction, but it's partly finished, so let's try and have a look. Here's a lovely backyard, small, but pretty cozy. You see, there are lots of high trees with benches below. You can sit down and enjoy the wonderful herbs that they planted here. The main point about the garden is the stream ending up in a small fountain. Here it is. Kids obviously love skipping over it. It starts from the main square. Check out the variety of all the different plants. In London, they're into it. I've noticed it many times. They're pretty good at gardening. That's what a good public space should look like. It should be competitive to charged public places in attracting visitors. Here's a basic test for a public space. You have 30 minutes free time and a laptop. Where will you go? If you choose a coffee shop, your home, or an office, you lose. A fine public space should attract people who can come there with a laptop in good weather to work or whatever. Then it's a lovely place.
I hope you're surrounded by lovely places like these too. Let me know what you enjoyed most from my trip to London. Press the like button above, and if you're from there, drop a comment with what else is worth seeing in your city.